You're still thinking about them, even after all this time. Quietly, unexpectedly, they show up in your mind like a shadow that hasn't made peace with the light. This isn't weakness, this is human. In Shaolin teaching, we say attachment is the echo of an unclosed moment. When something ends with no clarity, your mind replays it, trying to fix what cannot be fixed, like a monk returning again and again to a cracked bowl, thinking maybe this time it will hold water. But the truth is, some bowls were never meant to be repaired. They were meant to be replaced, not out of rejection, but because the lesson has already been received. In this teaching, I will take you into the deeper principles most never hear about. We won't talk about cliches. This isn't about moving on or forgetting. You will learn why your mind holds on, what your body remembers, and how to slowly return to yourself without violence or suppression. I will show you what the Shaolin path teaches about grief, energy, desire, and detachment, not coldness, but inner precision. These are not just ideas, they are daily practices, rituals, breath, thought, discipline. You will understand why presence makes the past powerless, and how silence, not reaction, is the most powerful response. Stay with me until the end. Something in you is ready to close that door, not by force, but by truth. Welcome to Shaolin Soulfire. If these words stir something in you, subscribe and walk with us. Some people don't leave your mind because they've taken root in your energy. Not as themselves, but as something deeper, a feeling, a need, a mirror you weren't ready to face. This is why Shaolin monks begin each day in silence. Before any movement, before any training, we sit, we observe where the mind goes when it has nowhere to hide, what it returns to again and again. Because attention is life force, and what steals it shapes you. When your thoughts circle one person, one moment, one story, it's not them you're obsessing over. It's what they represent. Maybe they made you feel worthy. Maybe they made you feel seen. Maybe they broke something open that had been closed for years. That feeling becomes addictive. But it's not the person, it's the part of you they activated. This is where true training begins. Not with fists, with awareness. In Shaolin practice, we do not allow the mind to wander without purpose. If it clings, we don't push it away, but we study it. We ask, what is this thought feeding? What wound is it circling like a hawk? And slowly, through breath, through presence, through daily attention, we begin to reclaim that energy, not by shutting it down, but by pulling it back inward, bit by bit. You may believe you're stuck on them, but you're really stuck on the version of yourself you were around them, or the version you hope to become. It's never about the other person. It's always about the part of you they reflect. And when you see that clearly, the obsession softens, not because you forced it away, but because you've brought your focus home. There was a time they made you feel something rare, not just love, something older than that, like you belonged, like the world paused when they looked at you. And ever since, it's not the person you keep replaying, it's the feeling of being seen without effort, the way your chest opened up around them, the way you laughed without guarding your words. What happens is this: the mind assigns that state to them. It builds a shrine in their shape, and every time you feel empty, your thoughts return there like a river bending toward its old path. But in the Shaolin tradition, we're taught to look deeper, not just at the object of desire, but at the roots of it. And what you find is simple, powerful, sometimes uncomfortable. Those feelings you miss, they came from you. That safety, they didn't create it. You relaxed in their presence. That was your surrender. That aliveness, it wasn't their gift. It was your spirit finally having space to move. That mystery, that spark, that light, it was always yours. They just happened to reflect it back for a while. This is why discipline matters. Not to suppress emotion, but to keep it from being misplaced. Because the moment you confuse your own light for someone else's, you give away your center. And the more you do that, the more powerless you feel when they're gone. The ancient path calls you back, not to forget them, but to remember yourself, to become the source of the very feeling you thought you lost, because it was never them, it was always you. Some thoughts don't knock, they walk in uninvited, unannounced. You might be making tea or folding clothes, and suddenly they're there again. A memory, a face, a feeling you didn't ask for. The old habit is to resist, to push it away, to distract yourself, to argue with it or pretend it's gone. But in Shaolin practice, the teaching is simple. We don't react, we listen, not because the thought is true, but because seeing it clearly gives it no power. When a thought arises, we don't follow it, we don't fight it either, We observe it, we name it, thinking. That's it. No story, no explanation, just a gentle return to the breath, to the step, to the present moment. This may sound passive, but it's not. This is strength, the kind that doesn't need to clench its fists, because real power lies in attention, not in force. There's an old story of a Shaolin master who was insulted in public. He stood quiet. When asked why, he said, if someone offers you a gift and you don't accept it, to whom does it belong? The same is true of your thoughts. Not every memory deserves your engagement. Not every emotion needs to be explored. The discipline is in the pause, the space between the thought and what you choose to do next. That's where mastery begins. The thought may return. That face may flash in your mind again. Let it. But each time meet it the same way. Still, clear, unmoved. You're not avoiding anything. You're simply choosing not to feed it. And in doing so, you begin to recover something more valuable than comfort. You begin to recover your center. Missing someone can feel honest, even sacred, like a deep ache that proves the heart is still alive. But sometimes what we call missing is not love. It's desire dressed up in memory, a desire to go back, to replay the moment with wiser hands, to speak softer, to hold longer, to rewrite an ending that didn't feel fair. But the mind does this because it can't accept what's final. It keeps reaching back, hoping if it just remembers hard enough, it can change what already happened. This is where suffering hides, in that quiet refusal to let things be over. The ancient path doesn't feed this loop. It doesn't offer fantasy or false hope. It teaches something much harder and far more freeing, that true mastery isn't about getting back what was lost. It's about no longer needing it, because the goal isn't to return to the old story. The goal is to become someone who no longer depends on it for meaning. There's a saying in old training halls, the monk does not long for the mountain behind him. He faces forward, no matter how beautiful the view once was. Discipline isn't just about movement or form. It's the courage to stop chasing what has already passed. The heart may still ache, yes, but the student learns to bow to that ache, not beg from it. Desire says, I want them back. Mastery says, I bless what was and I release it. And with that release comes something rare, lightness, clarity, the quiet strength of someone who no longer confuses pain with purpose. You don't need what's gone. You only need to return to the stillness that remains, the place inside you that was never missing, only waiting. Grief is not a weakness. It is not a flaw in your training. It's a natural wave of life that comes when something once meaningful disappears into silence. In the Shaolin path, grief is not pushed away or covered up. It is welcomed like an old teacher entering the hall. You bow to it. You let it speak. The world moves fast, and people will tell you to move on, to stay strong, to not let it get to you. But inner mastery begins when you stop rushing the ache, when you let yourself feel fully, without judging what arises. Not every tear needs to be explained. Not every emotion needs to be fixed. Some are meant to be honored. Grief is powerful because it shows you what mattered. It reveals the places in you that were touched, opened, softened, and if you sit with it, not wallow, not drown, just sit, it begins to unfold its lesson. It teaches you how deeply you cared, how alive your inner world really is. It teaches you that love once given leaves a trace. But discipline is knowing when to feel and when to let go. Grief isn't meant to be a permanent home. It's a passage, a season. You don't force it to leave, but you don't let it rule you either. You feel it like the wind passing through ropes fully, and then gently you return to stillness. The Shaolin way doesn't ask you to erase your sorrow. It asks you to hold it with grace, to trust that what breaks your heart can also deepen it, and to know that when the wave passes, you will still be standing, stronger, quieter, wiser. A wandering mind is like an open door. Anything can walk in. Old memories, unfinished stories, people long gone. But when you're truly present, fully rooted in your breath, your movement, your task, those ghosts have no room to enter. Presence fills the space where longing used to live. In Shaolin tradition, this is the essence of training, not just perfecting forms or sharpening the body, but bringing the mind home again and again, to the ground beneath your feet, to the inhale and exhale, to the exact shape of now. This is not control. It's not about holding on tighter. It's about becoming whole, so whole that nothing from the past can fracture you. When you are sweeping the floor, just sweep. When you walk, just walk. When you breathe, just breathe. It sounds simple, but it requires everything. It requires you to let go of yesterday's weight and tomorrow's questions. It requires you to be here, not just in body, but in spirit. Because every moment you truly inhabit weakens the grip of what no longer belongs. That memory of them, that loop that plays when you're idle, it doesn't survive in full presence. It fades, not because you banish it, but because you're no longer feeding it. This is not escape, it's return. Return to your body, return to now. You are not scattered pieces orbiting a past connection. You are a living force that deserves to be complete. Let your breath anchor you. Let your movements be sacred. Even the smallest task done with attention becomes a quiet form of freedom, not from memory, but from its hold over you. And in that freedom, something shifts. You stop chasing closure. You start becoming it. You don't need to erase their name from your memory. You don't need to rewrite the past or pretend they meant nothing. And you definitely don't need to harden your heart just to prove you've moved on. That's not the way. Shaolin teaches detachment, but not the kind that closes you off from life. True detachment isn't cold, it's clear. It allows you to see things as they are, not as you wish them to be. It says, yes, that chapter mattered, but it is no longer who I am. The mistake most people make is living as if the story is still being written, as if that person still holds the pen. But inner mastery begins when you take the pen back, not to cross out the past, but to continue writing forward with presence. You're allowed to remember without aching. You're allowed to love without needing. You're allowed to carry the lesson without carrying the weight. There's a quiet kind of strength in letting go without bitterness. It means you've stopped clinging to what was, not because it didn't matter, but because you've outgrown it. The energy you once spent keeping that connection alive, keeping their image sharp in your mind, is energy that now returns to you. This is not about forgetting, it's about release. Release from the invisible thread that pulls you back every time you start to move forward. Release from the belief that your worth is tied to their presence. Let them go, not with anger, not with force, just with clarity. Let them be part of your story, not the center of it. Let yourself breathe again without reaching for what's already gone. That's the discipline, that's the path, quiet, precise, free. There's the version of you that laughed with them, cried over them, stayed up wondering what went wrong. The version that hoped, doubted, reached, and maybe even lost itself for a while. That self was real. It lived through every word, every silence, every moment that felt like it might change everything. But beneath all of that, there's someone else. The quiet one, the witness. The part of you that never changed, even when your heart did. It saw everything. It watched you fall, watched you love, watched you break, and it never once flinched. That part is still here, still and steady like the center of a turning wheel. In Shaolin practice, this is what we train to return to. Not a new personality, not a better version of the past self, but the unshaken core that has always been present. When the emotions rise and fall like storms, the witness remains calm. It doesn't judge, it doesn't cling, it simply sees. And this seeing, this quiet awareness, is your strength. Because when you rest in that space, you're no longer swept away by the waves. You're standing on the shore, watching the tide come and go, knowing none of it can truly carry you away unless you let it. You don't need to erase the version of you that loved them. You only need to stop mistaking it for your whole self. That self was a moment, a season. The witness is the timeless ground beneath it. Return there, not once, but again and again, in breath, in silence, in the smallest act of mindfulness. That is where your power lives, not in changing the past, but in remembering who you are without it, steady, present, whole. The mind can wander far when the heart feels unfinished, but the longer you live inside a memory, the more distant your true path becomes. This is why Shaolin practice always returns you to what's real, the breath, the body, the step in front of you. Not to escape the past, but to reclaim the present. What honors you will remain in your life with ease. What doesn't is a teacher, not a punishment. Be grateful for both. The lesson is not to forget them, it's to stop abandoning yourself for them. Start small, one breath, one moment of presence each day. That's how strength is built, not in sudden changes but in quiet returns. Thank you for walking this path with us. If this teaching spoke to something in you, share it, reflect on it, and stay connected. Subscribe to Shaolin Soulfire, and may your steps be steady, your mind clear, and your heart undivided.